The alarm had been ringing for 3 hours. Elder Myra stood at the window of Haven Station and watched the stars. Somewhere out there, death was coming. She could feel it in her old bones. Haven Station was not much to look at. It was a collection of metal tubes and domes floating in the darkness near a cold, dead moon called Seven. But for 4,000 refugees, it was home. It was the only safe place left in the universe. They were a peaceful people. They had smooth blue skin and large dark eyes that could see in the deepest water. For 10,000 years, they had lived on their ocean world, trading with other species and harming no one. Then the Dominion Empire came. The Dominion wanted their planet. They wanted the rare metals beneath the ocean floor. And the Dominion did not ask. They took. Now they were scattered across the galaxy like leaves in the wind. Most were dead. The survivors had nowhere to go. No one wanted refugees. No one wanted trouble with the Dominion. Elder Myra turned away from the window. Her assistant, a young named, was waiting with a data pad in her webbed hands. "The Galactic Council has responded," said. Her voice was quiet, afraid. And Elder Myra asked, though she already knew the answer. "They will not help us. They say it is a political matter. They do not want to anger the Dominion." Elder Myra closed her eyes. She had expected this. She had sent messages to every member of the council. She had begged. She had reminded them of old treaties and promises. She had told them about the children on this station, the families, the innocent lives. None of it mattered. "How long until the Dominion fleet arrives?" she asked. 14 hours. 14 hours. That was all the time they had left. The station's command center was a small room filled with old computers and tired people. Captain Tom stood at the main console. He was a human, one of the few who worked on Haven Station. He was 50 years old with gray hair and a face full of worry lines. He had come here 2 years ago because he wanted to help. Now he was going to die here. "Give me the report," he said to his crew. Lieutenant Sarah Cole, a young woman with short brown hair, pulled up the data on the main screen. 12 Dominion destroyers, 2 carriers, and 1 dreadnought. The dreadnought alone has more firepower than our entire defense force. And what is our defense force? 3 patrol ships, old ones, and a shield generator that breaks down every 6 hours. Captain rubbed his face with his hands. "What about the evacuation ships?" "We have 2 transports. They can hold maybe 500 people each. Even if we started loading now, we could only save a quarter of the refugees. And the Dominion would shoot the transports down before they got far." There was silence in the room. Everyone knew what this meant. There was no escape. There was no rescue coming. They were going to die. Down in the medical bay, Dr. Anna Reed was preparing for the worst. She was a tall woman with kind eyes and steady hands. She had worked in war zones before. She had seen terrible things, but this was different. This was not a battle between armies. This was a slaughter waiting to happen. She walked through the rows of beds where sick lay recovering from old wounds. Many of them had survived the destruction of their. They had survived the long journey through space. They had survived hunger and disease and despair. And now, after all of that, they would die in an attack they could not stop. A small child looked up at her from one of the beds. His name was Tal, and he was only 7 years old. He had lost his parents in the war. "Dr. Anna," he said in his soft voice, "are the bad ships coming?" Dr. Reed knelt beside his bed. She took his small hand in hers. "Don't worry about that, Tal. You just rest." "My mother used to sing to me when I was scared," the child said. "Can you sing?" Dr. Reed felt tears in her eyes, but she smiled. "I'm not very good at singing, but I can stay here with you. Would you like that?" The child nodded and closed his eyes. In the main hall of the station, they had gathered. Hundreds of them sat together on the floor in a great circle. Elder Myra stood in the center. She looked at her people, at the faces of the young and the old, the brave and the afraid. "My children," she said, "I have lived for 200 years. I have seen our world in its beauty. I have seen it destroyed. I have seen us scattered across the stars, homeless and forgotten. And now I see us here at the end." They were silent. Some of them were crying softly. "The galaxy has turned its back on us. No aid is coming. No fleet will save us. We are alone." She paused and looked around the room. "But we are still the children of the deep ocean, and we will face our end with dignity." She raised her hands and they began to sing. It was an old song, a song from before history called The Last Song. It was sung only when death was certain. It was a song of acceptance, of peace, of saying goodbye to the light. The sound filled the station. It echoed through the metal corridors and empty rooms. It was beautiful and heartbreaking at the same time. In the command center, Captain heard the singing. He did not understand the words, but he understood the meaning. He had failed these people. He had tried so hard to protect them, and he had failed. Lieutenant Cole was still at her console. Suddenly, she sat up straight. "Captain," she said, "I'm picking up something on the sensors." "Dominion scouts." "No, sir, this is different. It's coming from the opposite direction, from uncharted space." Walked to her station and looked at the screen. There was a massive energy signature appearing on the edge of their sensor range. Something very big was emerging from somewhere that should have been empty. "What is that?" he asked. "I don't know, sir. The energy readings are off the charts. Whatever it is, it's huge." The singing stopped. They had felt it too, a strange vibration in the walls, a feeling in the air like the moment before a storm. Elder Myra looked up at the ceiling. For the first time in many days, she felt something she had forgotten. Hope. On the main screen, the shape became clear. It was a ship, a warship, and on its hull, barely visible but unmistakable, was a symbol that made Captain catch his breath. A blue planet surrounded by stars, the flag of the United Earth Navy. "That's impossible," Lieutenant Cole whispered. "The Earth fleet was destroyed. We saw the reports." But the ship kept coming, emerging from the void like a ghost from a dream. It was battered and covered in the marks of old battles, but it was real. It was here. And somewhere in the galaxy, everything was about to change. The USS Relentless had been dead for 3 years. That was what the galaxy believed. That was what the official records said. At the Battle of Cygnus Prime, it had been destroyed along with the rest of the human fleet. There were no survivors. There was no hope. But the galaxy was wrong. Captain David Cole stood on the bridge of his ship and looked at the stars. He was 45 years old, but he looked older. His dark hair had turned gray at the sides. His face was thin and tired. 3 years in the void had changed him. 3 years of running, hiding, and surviving on nothing had made him hard. "Navigation," he said, his voice calm and steady. "Confirm our position." Lieutenant Park looked up from her console. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and quick hands. She had been the best tactical officer in the fleet, and 3 years of hardship had made her even better. "Sir, we are in the system, near the 7th moon. I'm detecting a space station and," she paused, "and a Dominion war fleet on approach." The bridge went quiet. Every member of the crew knew what that meant. The Dominion was their enemy. The Dominion had destroyed their home. "How big is the fleet?" Captain Cole asked. 12 destroyers, 2 carriers, 1 dreadnought." Chief Engineer whistled softly from his station. He was a big man with thick arms and grease-stained hands. He had kept the Relentless running for 3 years with nothing but spare parts and desperate hope. "That's a full invasion force," he said. "They're not here for a fight, they're here for a slaughter." Captain Cole nodded slowly. "And the station?" "It's a medical outpost," Park reported. "Refugees, about 4,000 of them." The captain closed his eyes for a moment. He knew that name. He would never forget that name. 3 years ago, when the Relentless was burning and broken after the battle, a trading ship had found them. The crew had every reason to run. The Dominion was hunting for survivors. Helping a human ship meant death. But the captain did not run. She guided the Relentless to a hidden wormhole. She gave them supplies and coordinates. And when Dominion fighters came, she turned her ship to face them. She bought the humans time with her own life. Captain Cole had never learned her name, but he had made a promise that day, a promise to repay the debt. "Sir," said Ensign Rachel Torres from the communications station. She was young, only 23, with bright eyes that still held some innocence. "I'm receiving transmissions from the station, distress signals. They've been calling for help for hours. No one is responding." "No one." "The Galactic Council has refused to help. They are on their own." Captain Cole looked at the main screen. The station was small and fragile. The Dominion fleet was vast and powerful, and between them there was nothing, just empty space and silence. "What are our options?" he asked. Lieutenant Park pulled up the tactical data. "We could run. The wormhole exit is still unstable, but we could try to find another route, make it back to human space." "And the refugees?" "They would die, all of them." The captain shook his head. "What else?" Park took a deep breath. "We could fight, Engage the Dominion fleet and try to protect the station. And our chances? I calculate a survival probability of 3.7%. Sergeant Jake stepped forward. He was the leader of the Marine squad, a man built like a rock with scars on his face and hands. He had fought in more battles than he could count. "Captain," he said, "you're not seriously thinking about this. We have 200 people on this ship, 200 humans. If we fight, we die." "I know. The smart move is to run. Report back to what's left of Earth Command. Tell them about the wormhole. We could make a difference in the real war." Captain Cole turned to face his sergeant. "And what about the debt we owe?" Was silent. He remembered the ship. He remembered the sacrifice. "A captain gave her life for us," Cole said. "She had nothing to gain. She knew she would die, but she did it anyway because it was right." He looked around the bridge at his crew. "I'm not ordering anyone to fight. This is a choice. We can run and live, or we can stay and probably die. I won't force anyone." The bridge was quiet. The only sound was the hum of the engines and the beeping of the computers. Ensign Torres was the first to speak. "I didn't survive 3 years in hell just to run away from doing the right thing. I vote we fight." Chief nodded. "My engines have been holding together with nothing but hope and swear words. Might as well use them for something that matters. I'm in." Lieutenant Park looked at her console, then at the captain. 3.7% is not zero. I've won against worse odds in card games. I vote fight." One by one, every person on the bridge made their choice. Not a single one voted to run. Sergeant shook his head slowly, but there was a small smile on his face. "You humans are crazy, every single one of you." He straightened his shoulders. "But I didn't join the Marines to live forever. Count me in." Captain Cole felt something in his chest. Pride, love, gratitude. These were his people. These were the best people he had ever known. "Set course for Haven Station," he ordered. "Maximum speed, and open a channel to the station command." The Relentless turned toward the distant station and began to move. It was a battered ship, covered in scars and patches. Its hull was dented from old battles. Its paint was gone, burned away by years in harsh space. But its engine still burned bright and its weapons still worked. On Haven Station, Captain stared at the communication screen in disbelief. "This is Captain David Cole of the USS Relentless," the message said. "We are en route to your position. Hold on, help is coming." "That ship was destroyed," said. "Everyone saw it." "Apparently not," Lieutenant Sarah Cole replied. She was studying the sensor data. "It's definitely a human battleship, heavily damaged but operational, and it's heading straight for us." "They can't be serious. One ship against that fleet, they'll be destroyed." In the main hall, the head stopped their last song. They too had received the message. They stood in silence, looking at each other with wide, confused eyes. Elder Myra pushed her way through the crowd. Her old heart was beating fast. "What is happening?" she asked. Someone showed her the message on a data pad. She read it 3 times to make sure she understood. "Humans," she whispered, "the humans are coming." She remembered the stories. Every knew the stories about humans. They were young in the galaxy, barely 1,000 years in space. They were not the strongest. They were not the fastest. They were not the most advanced. But they were stubborn. They were loyal, and they kept their promises. A long time ago, a ship had helped a human vessel. It was a small act of kindness in a cruel universe. The captain had expected nothing in return. She had done it because it was right. And now, 3 years later, a ghost ship was rising from the void to repay that kindness. Elder Myra looked up at the ceiling, toward the stars she could not see. A single tear rolled down her blue cheek. "Impossible," she said softly. "This is impossible." But she was smiling. On the bridge of the Relentless, Captain Cole watched the station grow larger on the main screen. In 12 hours, the Dominion fleet would arrive. In 12 hours, the battle would begin. He did not know if he would survive. He did not know if his crew would survive. But he knew one thing for certain. He would not run, not this time, not ever again. The humans were coming, and nothing in the galaxy would stop them. The Dominion fleet arrived exactly on schedule. 12 destroyers came first, spreading out in a wide formation like hunters circling their prey. Behind them came the 2 carriers, each one holding dozens of fighter craft, and at the center, massive and terrible, came the dreadnought. Commander Vex stood on the bridge of the dreadnought and smiled. He was a tall creature with gray skin and 4 eyes that glowed a faint yellow. The Dominion had conquered 100 worlds, and Vex had been there for most of them. He enjoyed his work. "Status of the target?" he asked. His tactical officer checked the screens. "The station has minimal defenses, 3 patrol ships and a shield generator. They will fall in minutes." "Excellent. And what is this other ship I'm seeing on sensors?" "A human battleship, Commander. It appears to be positioning itself between us and the station." Vex laughed. It was a cold, cruel sound. "A human ship? I thought we destroyed them all at Cygnus Prime." "Apparently one survived, Commander." "One ship?" Vex shook his head in amusement. "One damaged ship against my entire fleet. The humans truly are as stupid as the stories say. Open a channel. I want to speak to their captain." On the bridge of the Relentless, Captain Cole stood with his hands behind his back. His crew was at battle stations. Every system was ready. The ship hummed with energy and tension. "Incoming transmission," Ensign Torres reported. "It's the Dominion commander." "Put it on screen." The face of Commander Vex appeared. He was grinning with too many teeth. "Human Captain," Vex said, "I am Commander Vex of the Dominion Empire. I don't know how you survived, but your luck has run out. Stand aside and let us take the station. If you do this, I will give you a quick death. If you do not," he spread his forearms wide, "I will make you suffer." Captain Cole looked at the alien face on the screen. He felt no fear, only cold determination. "Commander," he said calmly, "this station is under the protection of the United Earth Navy. These refugees are our responsibility. If you want them, you will have to go through us." Vex stopped smiling. "You cannot be serious. Look at your ship, look at my fleet. You have no chance." "Maybe, but we're not moving." "Then you will die." "We all die eventually. The question is what we die for." Captain Cole leaned forward slightly. "I choose to die for something that matters. What about you, Commander? What will you die for?" The transmission ended. Vex was no longer laughing. "All ships," the commander ordered, his voice now hard and angry, "attack formation. Destroy that human vessel, then take the station." The Dominion fleet began to move. On the Relentless, Lieutenant Park watched the enemy ships approach on her tactical screen. Her fingers danced over the controls, calculating angles and distances. "They're coming in fast," she reported. "Lead destroyer will be in weapons range in 3 minutes." "What about our special weapon?" Captain Cole asked. Chief answered from his station. "The gravity lance is charged and ready. We only have enough power for 2 shots, maybe 3. After that, we're down to conventional weapons." The gravity lance was an experimental weapon that the Relentless had been testing before the Battle of Cygnus Prime. It was powerful enough to tear a ship in half, but it drained enormous amounts of energy. Using it was a gamble. "Target the lead destroyer," Cole ordered. "Fire on my command." The seconds ticked by. The Dominion ships grew larger on the screen. The lead destroyer was a sleek predator, its weapons already glowing with charge. "Range in 10 seconds, Park counted down. 9, 8, 7. Cole watched the screen. Timing was everything. 6, 5, 4. "Fire!" The Relentless shuddered as the gravity lance activated. A beam of twisted space shot forward, invisible to the naked eye but devastating in its effect. It struck the lead destroyer directly in the center. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the destroyer simply came apart. Its hull crumpled like paper. Its engines exploded. The entire ship tore itself in half and scattered into 1,000 burning pieces. On the Dominion dreadnought, Commander Vex stared at his screen in shock. "What was that?" he demanded. "What kind of weapon?" No one had an answer. "Continue the attack," Vex shouted. "All ships continue the attack." The Dominion fleet did not stop. The remaining destroyers opened fire. Missiles and energy beams streaked through space toward the human ship. "Brace for impact," Captain Cole ordered. The Relentless took the first hits. The shields flared and flickered. The ship shook violently. Somewhere deep in the hull, metal screamed and tore. "Shield at 60%, Park reported. "Hull breaches on decks 7 and 12. "Return fire, all weapons." The Relentless fought back. Its cannons roared, sending streams of fire into the enemy formation. Another destroyer took hits and began to burn. A third lost its engines and drifted helplessly. But there were too many enemies. For every ship the Relentless damaged, 2 more took its place. The hits kept coming. The shields kept falling. "Shield at 40%, 30, 20. "Sir," Chief shouted over the noise, We can't take much more of this. Captain Cole gripped his command chair as another explosion rocked the ship. Hold the line. We hold the line. On Haven Station, everyone was watching the battle. In the command center, in the medical bay, in the refugee halls, screens showed the desperate fight happening in the space above them. Captain watched the human battleship take hit after hit. He had been a soldier once. He knew what he was seeing. "They're dying for us," he said quietly. "They're dying and they don't even know us." Elder Myra stood beside him. Her old hands were clasped together. Her eyes never left the screen. "That is what makes them remarkable," she said. "They do not ask what they will gain. They only ask what is right." A Dominion boarding pod slammed into the station's outer hull, then another, then a dozen more. "They're boarding us," said. He grabbed his weapon from the rack. "All personnel to defense positions. They're boarding us." The Dominion soldiers poured into the station's corridors. They were big, armored, and brutal. They expected no resistance. They expected easy prey. They found Sergeant Jake waiting for them. Had set up a defensive position in the main corridor leading to the refugee quarters. With him were 20 Marines and 30 station security officers. Not many, but enough to make the enemy pay. "Hold your fire until they're in the kill zone," ordered. "Then give them everything you have." The first wave of Dominion soldiers came around the corner. They saw the barricade and raised their weapons. "Now," said. The corridor exploded with gunfire. The first wave of attackers fell. The second wave stumbled over the bodies and fell too. The third wave found cover and started shooting back. It was going to be a long fight. In the medical bay, Dr. Anna Reed heard the sounds of battle getting closer. She looked at her patients, at the wounded who could not run, at the children who stared at her with frightened eyes. "Everyone stay calm," she said. "We're going to be okay." She picked up a medical kit in one hand and a pistol in the other. She was a doctor. She had sworn to do no harm, but today she was also a soldier. Today she would protect her patients with her life. Above the station, the Relentless continued to burn. Half its weapons were destroyed. Its shields were gone. Fire poured from a dozen holes in its hull, but it was still firing. It was still fighting. Captain Cole stood on a bridge filled with smoke and sparks. Blood ran down his face from a cut on his forehead. Around him, his crew worked frantically to keep the ship alive. "Sir," Lieutenant Park said, her voice strained, "I'm receiving a transmission from the station. Elder Myra." "Put her through." The old's face appeared on the screen. Behind her, Cole could hear distant explosions and screaming. "Captain," Elder Myra said, "there is a path through the asteroid field, a hidden route. You could escape. You could survive." Cole shook his head. "We're not leaving." "You have done enough. You have shown courage beyond measure, but you will die if you stay." "Then we die." Captain Cole looked at the old alien with steady eyes. "We don't leave people behind. Not ever. That's what it means to be human." Elder Myra stared at him for a long moment. Then she bowed her head. "Then we will die together," she said, "and the stars will remember what you did here today." The transmission ended. The battle continued. And the Relentless held the line. The corridor was filled with smoke and the smell of burning metal. Sergeant crouched behind the barricade and counted his remaining ammunition. Not much, not nearly enough. Beside him, Corporal Lisa changed the power cell on her sniper rifle. She was a quiet woman who rarely spoke, but her shots never missed. She had killed 17 enemy soldiers in the last hour. "How many more of them are there?" she asked. Looked around the corner. The Dominion troops had stopped their advance and were gathering for another push. He counted at least 100 soldiers. "Too many," he said. "We need to fall back to the secondary position. If we fall back, they reach the refugee quarters." "I know." Private Tommy Grant was the youngest Marine in the squad. He was only 19 years old with a face that still looked like a boy's. His hands were shaking, but he held his weapon steady. "Sarge," he said, "I'm scared." Looked at the young man. In another life, Grant could have been his son. "Good," said. "Fear keeps you sharp. Fear keeps you alive, but don't let it control you. You're a Marine. You're here to protect people. That's all that matters." Grant nodded slowly. He took a deep breath and steadied his hands. The Dominion soldiers attacked. They came in a wave of gray armor and flashing weapons. The corridor filled with fire and screams. The Marines fought back. They fought with everything they had, but there were too many enemies and not enough defenders. One by one the Marines fell, shot, burned, overwhelmed. Felt a bullet hit his shoulder. He kept firing. Another hit his leg. He kept firing. He would not stop. He would not let them pass. "Fall back," he shouted. "Everyone fall back to the refugee quarters. I'll hold them." "Sarge, no," Grant yelled. "That's an order, Private. Get these people out of here." The surviving Marines began to retreat, stood alone at the barricade, firing into the endless wave of enemies. He knew he was going to die. He had known it from the beginning, but he would buy his people every second he could. A grenade landed at his feet. He kicked it away, but it exploded in the air, throwing him backward. His vision went dark, then light, then dark again. When he opened his eyes, he saw Grant standing over him. The young Marine had come back. He had dragged behind cover and was now firing at the approaching enemies. "I told you to run," growled. "I'm sorry, Sarge. I'm not good at following orders." More Marines appeared. Was there others too? They had all come back. "You idiots," said. "You beautiful idiots." They held the line together. In the medical bay, the battle had arrived. Dominion soldiers broke through the doors and stormed inside, expecting to find easy victims. They found Dr. Anna Reed waiting with a pistol and a fury they had never seen before. She shot the first soldier in the face. She shot the second in the chest. The third one reached her and knocked the gun from her hand. She grabbed a surgical tool and stabbed it through his armor, into his neck. "Stay behind me," she shouted to her patients. They watched in amazement. This human woman, this healer, was fighting like a warrior. She was bleeding from a cut on her arm. Her white coat was stained with smoke and blood, but she would not stop. Little Tal, the orphan boy, watched from behind an overturned bed. He had never seen anything like this. He had never seen someone fight so hard for people who were not even their own kind. A Dominion soldier raised his weapon at Dr. Reed. She was out of ammunition. She had nothing left. She closed her eyes and waited for the end. The shot never came. A Marine burst through the side door and tackled the soldier. It was Grant. His armor was cracked and burned. His young face was covered in dirt and blood, but he was alive and he was fighting. "Doc, are you okay?" he gasped. "I'm fine, the patients. We'll protect them, I promise." More Marines poured into the medical bay. The Dominion soldiers were pushed back. The battle continued, but for now, the medical bay was safe. Above the station, the Relentless was dying. The great ship had taken so much damage that Chief could barely believe it was still flying. Half the crew was dead or wounded. The bridge was a ruin of sparks and broken screens. Captain Cole stood in the center of the chaos, giving orders with a calm voice. He was wounded in 3 places, but he refused to leave his post. "Status," he demanded. "Weapons at 30%, Park reported. "Engines barely functional. Hull integrity critical, sir. We have minutes at best." "What about the gravity lance?" "1 shot left, maybe." Cole looked at the tactical screen. The Dominion dreadnought was hanging back, letting the destroyers do the work, but Cole could see it preparing to move. Commander Vex was getting impatient. "He's going to fire on the station," Cole said quietly. "He's tired of this. He's going to destroy the station directly." "We can't let that happen," Park said. "No, we can't." His voice came over the intercom. His words were interrupted by coughs and the sound of flames. "Captain, I have an idea, a crazy idea." "I'm listening." "The station's shields are still working, barely. If I can boost our signal and bounce the gravity lance off their shield grid, I can amplify the beam. It might be enough to damage the dreadnought." "Might." "It's the best I've got, sir." Cole looked at the screen. The dreadnought's main weapon was glowing. It was charging up for a shot that would kill 4,000 innocent people. "Do it," he ordered. On the dreadnought, Commander Vex watched the human ship with contempt. It was a wreck, a burning piece of garbage that should have died hours ago, but it was still there, still fighting. It was annoying. "The main cannon is ready," his tactical officer reported. "We can destroy the station in 1 shot." Finally, Vex smiled his terrible smile. "Fire." The dreadnought's main cannon began to glow brighter. Energy poured into the weapon, enough energy to crack a moon in half. In seconds, it would fire and Haven Station would become dust. But the Relentless fired first. The gravity lance activated. The beam shot toward the station, hit the shield grid and bounced. The energy twisted and redirected toward the dreadnought. It struck the massive ship just as its weapon was about to fire. The dreadnought shuddered, its cannon went dark. Explosions rippled across its hull. It did not die, but it was hurt, badly hurt. "What happened?" Vex screamed. "What did they do?" "The weapon is offline, Commander. Engines damaged. We need to retreat." "No," Vex slammed his fists on his command console. "I will not retreat from one human ship. All destroyers close formation. Ram them if you have to. Destroy them." The Dominion fleet surged forward. The Relentless had nothing left. No weapons, no shields, no hope. Captain Cole looked at his crew, his family. They had fought so hard. They had done everything possible, and now it was over. "It's been an honor," he said quietly. "Every one of you." Then something appeared on the sensors. Something impossible. "Sir," Ensign Torres whispered. "Sir, look." Ships were dropping out of hyperspace. Human ships, a dozen, then 2 dozen, then 30. They came from everywhere. Old warships, converted freighters, mining vessels with weapons strapped to their hulls. They were not an official fleet. They were the human resistance, the survivors, the ones who had never stopped fighting. And they had followed the Relentless's signal all the way here. "This is Captain Maria Santos of the Resistance Fleet," a voice crackled over the radio. "We got your message, Relentless. You didn't think you were going to have all the fun without us, did you?" Cole felt something break inside him. Relief, joy, hope. "Captain Santos," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "You have no idea how good it is to hear your voice. Save the thanks for later. Let's finish this fight first." The human fleet attacked. Fresh ships with full weapons and burning anger. The Dominion destroyers, already weakened by hours of battle, began to fall one by one. But that was not all. More ships arrived. Ships with unfamiliar designs. Ships from the Galactic Council. 3 species had finally found their courage. They had watched the battle on every channel. They had seen one human ship stand against impossible odds. They had felt shame for their cowardice. And now they had come to make things right. The Dominion fleet was surrounded, outnumbered. Commander Vex watched his Empire's invasion force crumble around him. "Retreat," he ordered, his voice hollow. "All ships retreat." The Dominion fled. The battle was over. Haven Station was saved. On the bridge of the burning Relentless, Captain David Cole finally allowed himself to breathe. His ship was dying, but his people were alive. The refugees were alive. The debt was paid. He slumped into his command chair and closed his eyes. They had won. Against all odds, against all reason, they had won. The Relentless was too damaged to save. Everyone knew it. The ship that had survived the Battle of Cygnus Prime, that had wandered the void for 3 years, that had stood alone against an entire fleet, was finally dying. Captain David Cole walked through the ruined corridors one last time. Emergency lights flickered in the darkness. Water dripped from broken pipes. The walls were scorched and torn, but to Cole, it was still the most beautiful ship in the galaxy. The evacuation was almost complete. Shuttles had been moving crew members to Haven Station for the past 2 hours. The wounded went first, then the engineers, then the rest of the crew. Cole had ordered everyone off. "Captain," Lieutenant Park said through his communicator, "the last shuttle is waiting. It's time to go." "I'll be there in a minute." He stopped in front of a small memorial wall. It was just a metal plate with names carved into it. The names of everyone who had died during their 3 years in the void. 47 names. 47 friends. "We made it," Cole said softly. "We kept our promise." He touched the wall with his fingers, then turned and walked away. The last shuttle departed from the dying ship. As it pulled away, Cole looked through the window at the Relentless. Fires were burning along its hull. Explosions rippled through its sections as systems failed one by one. It was going down like a warrior, burning bright until the very end. Then the reactor finally failed. The ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light, scattering pieces across the darkness of space. Cole felt tears on his cheeks. He did not try to hide them. "Goodbye, old friend," he whispered. Haven Station was different now. The battle had left scars everywhere. Walls were blackened by fire. Corridors were marked by bullet holes. The smell of smoke still hung in the air, but the station was alive. The refugees were alive, and that was all that mattered. In the main hall they had gathered again, but this time they were not singing the last song. They were singing something else. A song of gratitude, a song of hope, a song of new beginnings. Elder Myra stood at the center of the crowd. Beside her stood Captain Cole and the surviving members of his crew. They looked exhausted, wounded, broken in 100 ways, but they also looked proud. 3 years ago, Elder Myra said, her voice carrying across the silent hall, a captain saw a human ship in danger. She had no reason to help. She had everything to lose, but she helped anyway because it was right. She gave her life so that strangers might live. The old looked at Cole with her large dark eyes. Today, those strangers came back. They had every reason to run. They had every reason to save themselves, but they remembered. They came back. They stood between us and death, and they did not move. She reached out and took Cole's hand in her webbed fingers. On behalf of my people, on behalf of every in the galaxy, I thank you. We are in your debt, and we will never forget. They cheered. It was a strange sound, like waves crashing on a distant shore, but it was beautiful. It was the sound of joy and relief and gratitude all mixed together. In the corner of the hall, Sergeant leaned against the wall and watched. His shoulder was wrapped in bandages. His leg was in a brace. He looked like he had been through a war, which he had. Corporal stood beside him. She was also wounded, but she was smiling. It was the first time I'd ever seen her smile. You know, she said, I always wondered what we were fighting for. All those years of war, all that death. I wondered if any of it meant anything. And now, she looked at the celebrating, at the children running and playing, at the old ones crying with happiness. Now I know, she said. Private Grant was in the medical bay, sitting on a bed while Dr. Reed examined his wounds. His armor had been removed. Without it, he looked even younger, just a kid. You're lucky, Dr. Reed said. A few cuts and bruises, nothing broken, you'll be fine. What about you, Doc? She had bandages on her arm and a cut on her face, but she was already back to work. I've had worse. I'll live. Grant was quiet for a moment. Then he asked, Doc, were you scared during the fight? Dr. Reed stopped what she was doing. She looked at the young Marine with honest eyes. Terrified, she said. I was terrified the whole time. But you kept fighting. So did you? Grant thought about this. Then he nodded slowly. I guess being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means being scared and doing it anyway. That's exactly right. Dr. Reed put her hand on his shoulder. You did good today, Private. You should be proud. In a quiet corner of the station, little Tal sat by a window and looked at the stars. The battle was over. The bad ships were gone, but the boy still felt afraid. A shadow fell over him. He looked up and saw Captain Cole standing there. May I sit? The captain asked. Tal nodded. Cole sat down beside him on the floor. Are you the man who saved us? Tal asked. I'm one of them. A lot of people saved you today. My crew, the other ships that came, the brave soldiers on this station. Why? Cole looked at the small alien child. Why what? Why did you help us? We're not humans. We have nothing to give you. Why did you come? The captain was quiet for a long time. Then he said, a long time ago I was in trouble. My ship was broken. My people were dying. A captain helped me. She saved my life. I never got to thank her. I never even learned her name. What happened to her? She died. She gave her life to save strangers, just like your people are willing to do, just like humans try to do. Tal was quiet. Then he asked, what was it like, being alone in space for so long? Hard, very hard. There were times when I wanted to give up, times when I thought there was no point in going on. Cole looked out at the stars. But I kept thinking about that captain, about what she did, and I told myself that if I ever got the chance I would be like her. I would help someone else the way she helped me. And you did. I tried. The boy was silent for a moment. Then he leaned against the captain's arm. Cole did not move. He just sat there looking at the stars with a small alien child resting against him. 2 weeks later, the Galactic Council met for an emergency session. Representatives from every major species gathered in the Great Hall. For the first time in history, they were given a seat at the table. Elder Myra stood before the assembly. Behind her was a screen showing images from the battle, the lone human ship, the overwhelming Dominion fleet, the desperate fight. You asked us why we trust humans, she said. You questioned our alliance with them. You called them reckless, violent, dangerous. She let the words hang in the air. When we had nothing to offer them, when helping us meant their death, they came anyway. They stood in the fire and did not run. One ship against an empire. 200 lives against 4,000. They knew the odds. They came anyway. She looked around the hall at the silent faces. That is what makes them worthy, not their technology, not their strength, their heart, their loyalty, their refusal to abandon the helpless. She raised her head high. The formally ally with humanity, from this day until the last star dies. The council erupted in debate. Some species cheered, others protested, but it did not matter. The galaxy had changed. Everyone had seen the broadcast. Everyone knew what the humans had done. 6 months later, a memorial was built on Haven Station. It was a simple statue carved from stone brought from Earth itself. It showed a human Marine, helmet off, kneeling to shield a small child. The Marine's armor was cracked. His face was tired, but his arms were strong and protective. At the base of the statue, words were carved in both human and languages. They came when no one else would. They stood when no one else could. They are humanity. Private Tommy Grant stood before the memorial. He was older now, harder. His boyish face had gained lines of experience. His right arm was mechanical, a prosthetic replacement for the one he had lost in the battle. Beside him stood Sergeant, leaning on a cane. His wounds had healed, but he would never walk the same way again. "It's strange," Grant said. "I spent my whole life wondering what I would do when the moment came, whether I would run or fight, whether I would be brave or afraid." "And now you know," said. "Now I know." Grant looked at the statue. "I was terrified, Sarge. The whole time I was terrified, but I didn't run." "No, you didn't." They stood in silence for a while. Behind them, the station hummed with life, and humans worked side by side, rebuilding, healing, starting over. "Do you think it mattered?" Grant asked. "Everything we did, all the people who died, do you think it made a difference?" Thought about this? He thought about the battle, the fear, the blood and fire. He thought about the small victories and the terrible losses. He thought about the faces of the people they had saved. "Look around you," he said finally. "Look at these people, the families, the children. They're alive because of what we did. They have futures because we gave them a chance." He put his hand on the young man's shoulder. "Yeah, kid, it mattered." Grant nodded slowly. A small smile crossed his face. "You know what I've been thinking about," he said. "What?" "There are other stations out there, other refugees, other people who need help." He turned to look at. "When the new ship is ready, I want to be on it. I want to keep doing this." Laughed. It was a genuine laugh, warm and proud. "You know something, Grant. I think you're going to be a hell of a soldier." "I had good teachers." They walked away from the memorial together, toward the future. Behind them, the statue stood watch over Haven Station. And somewhere in the galaxy, other people looked up at the stars and wondered if help would ever come. It would. The humans were out there, and they would never stop fighting for those who could not fight for themselves. That was their promise. That was their legacy. That was what it meant to be human.